when you look at the research, it would suggest, wow, kids need to be back in school. That, and I know many of you know about this, but on the social, emotional level, reports of high rates of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder due to social isolation. And it's not just because kids are at home, not being in contact with kids, but when kids are in a home where often the parents are struggling with the impact of new economic stresses due to job losses.
I just think that item number one that needs to be so much a part of this conversation, especially in communities of color, are the issues around socio-emotional wellness of where students are in this moment. I raised that because there was a report that came out just last week from the UCLA Center for Health and Policy Research that showed that approximately half of all adolescents in California reported having some type of mental health challenges in the last year. And a third of those young people said that the levels of depression that they felt were so high that it debilitated them in their ability to do their work.
Again, just echoing kind of what was said before, is that we're seeing a lot of high stress and anxiety from students who are concerned about school, concerned about academic performance, or thinking about the responsibilities of taking care of their loved ones at homes or siblings. For parents, I think they're concerned about their stress that their kids are under. Questions my staff is getting include, can you provide a safe space for kids to play? Is there anything you could do with mindfulness to address mental health or stress issues? And I think one issue that is distinct in the AAPI community, the Asian American Pacific Islander community, is really the rise of harassment and bullying that we've seen. And I think that is kind of part and parcel from some of the rhetoric that we heard from the past administration on where this pandemic originated from.
Kung flu, I can name 19 different versions of names.
We had so many parents who were not even engaged. Their children were not engaged by the school. Not that the parents didn't want to be engaged, right? Parents were calling out for help. Parents were saying, I don't have technology. I live in an area that has poor Wi-Fi, or I don't have the Wi-Fi in my home. And schools kept saying, give us time, give us time. Again, here we are years later and now in a pandemic, and they're telling us, give us time, right? But during the pandemic, they were telling us, like, we've never been through this.
This virus attacked everybody. Kids, old people, young people. This virus not respect nobody. The other thing is, how can I explain to the kid to not be close to the other kids? How you control that?
So from thinking about March, our schools closed here March 13th. All the way to June was when some of our students got laptops or got tablets in their homes to do work. And then they were rushed to do this work, just like hurry up and do the work and we'll give you a pass or no pass grade, right? And so how does that look for a kid who's trying to learn something and they've gotten 60 documents, or you have 60 documents and it's expected to be turned in 30 days and they have no instructor online to do that work with them? Or how does that look for a second grader who's on a Zoom and the teacher's telling them, hey, click, copy and paste and put that on this portion of the document. And this second grader is like, I don't know how to copy and paste, right? I've never done this, but the accountability was still put on that child to produce something that other kids are having support to do.
As the conversations around reopening have come about, the plan for teachers has not always been clear. The plan for how teachers will be a part of this process is not always equitable. And what we know is that many of our teachers have been really, really struggling in this moment because they have tried to do their jobs. Many have their own young children at home they're trying to supervise. Many are also caring for their loved ones. And as we're talking about reopening, many are still not comfortable coming back to schools. And I just don't think we can put this big rush into coming back to schools without making sure that teachers feel protected, valuable, and safe in that journey.
Well, there are numerous obstacles, which many of you are familiar with, but when you add it up, it is quite daunting. I mean, for one thing, right now we're in a situation where the pandemic is at extremely alarmingly high levels. It's looks like things in the last week or two have improved, but it's still at an incredibly high level. Deaths are at an incredibly high level. Those haven't really gone down. And so that gives a lot of people caution about, is this the right time to be sending kids back to school? When really we're supposed to be being super cautious ourselves in our own lives. And so to send kids into a situation and the teachers. And we also know that the rate of infection and the rate of deaths has been disproportionately far higher amongst Black and Latino families and low-income families in general.
We need to address not only the COVID safety protocols in place, and I think Louis Friedman did an excellent job of talking a little bit about just the science that's at play and how that can be changing and be very confusing in the decision-making process. But to really ensure that schools and districts are taking measures to ensure cultural competency, right? And the equity agenda is a key part of that decision-making calculus.
We also must recognize that many of our students have done well in this particular format. For many of our students, the remote format works much better for them than the in-person format does. So as we have teachers who may not feel comfortable coming back to in-person instruction, I think that remote learning should be here to stay in some form. For those students who suffer from high levels of anxiety, for those students who suffer from bullying at school, that the online format may very well continue to be in place to help support them, as well as those teachers who prefer to continue to do the work in the online format. So I hope we can consider those factors as we move back towards reopening.